single mother and children inherited a farm. But in the barn there was a hidden fortune. Rachel Thompson held the letter with trembling hands while her 4 children waited in silence. The court officer had just left their small rented apartment with the final eviction notice for 3 days from now. She had nowhere to go, nor enough money to pay for another place. The letter had arrived that morning from a notary office in a small town she barely knew. It said that a gentleman named Walter Gardner had passed away and left a rural property to her in his will. Rachel read it 3 times without understanding. She didn't know anyone by that name. "Mom, what does it say?" asked Emily, her 12-year-old daughter. "I'm not sure if it's true, but it says here that we inherited a farm." "What do you mean we inherited?" the girl questioned, moving closer. "A gentleman left it to us, but I don't remember him." Rachel read the details again. The farm was located in a small town called Fairfield, in the countryside of New York City, about 4 hours from the capital. The document had an official stamp, a lawyer's signature. Everything seemed legitimate. But how could someone she didn't even know leave an entire property to her? "Are we going to live on a real farm?" asked Ethan, 7 years old, his eyes shining. "I don't know, son. I need to understand this properly." Rachel spent the whole night trying to remember any Walter Gardner. Could he have been an old customer from the restaurant where she worked? Over the past 10 years, since her husband abandoned her while she was pregnant with their youngest, she had worked at 3 different restaurants. She served so many people every day that it was impossible to remember everyone. The next morning she called the number from the notary office listed in the letter. A woman's voice answered, polite and formal. "Mitchell Notary Office, good morning." "Good morning, my name is Rachel Thompson. I received a letter about an inheritance." "Oh yes, Ms. Rachel, I was already expecting your call. Mr. Walter had everything registered 6 months ago before he passed away. The property has been in your name since then." "But I don't understand. Who was this gentleman? He didn't leave detailed explanations, just the formal will. He said that you deserved to have a safe place to raise your children. The property has been vacant for a few months." Rachel felt a tightness in her chest. Someone she didn't even remember had thought of her and the children. "And what do I need to do?" "You need to come here to sign some documents and receive the keys. When can you come?" Rachel looked around the small apartment, the boxes already half-packed because of the eviction, the children watching with hope. "I can come tomorrow." "Perfect. Bring your documents and the children's." That night, Rachel told the children they were going to see the farm. Emily helped pack the old suitcases with the few clothes they had. Ethan and the younger twins, Joshua and Michael, 5 years old, were too excited to sleep. "Mom, will there be animals?" asked Joshua. "I don't know, sweetie. We'll find out together." The bus ride the next day was long. The children slept most of the way, but Rachel stayed awake, watching the landscape change from grey buildings to green fields. Was this really real? Could it be some mistake or a cruel prank? They arrived in Fairfield in the late afternoon. The town was small, with a central square, some old shops, and people looking curiously at the outsiders. The notary office was on the main street, an old building with heavy wooden doors. The notary, Mrs. Barbara, was a lady with white hair and thick glasses who greeted Rachel with a kind smile. "You must be Rachel. What beautiful children." "Thank you. I'm still trying to understand all of this." Mr. Walter was very reserved. He lived alone on the farm for many years. He had no children or close relatives. A few months before he passed away, he came here and registered the will. He said you were a special person who deserved that property. "But I don't remember him." Mrs. Barbara showed an old photo. A gentleman around 70 years old, thin, wearing a straw hat, looked at the camera with a serene expression. Rachel studied that face, searching for some memory, but nothing came. "He used to go to the capital a few times a month. Maybe he met you there." Rachel signed all the papers, still somewhat in shock. When Mrs. Barbara handed over the keys, she felt the real weight of it all in her hands. "The farm is about 15 kilometers from here. I'll ask my nephew to take you by car. It's too far to walk with the children." Mrs. Barbara's nephew, a young man around 20 years old named Robert, loaded their suitcases into an old pickup truck. During the journey on dirt roads, He told a bit about Mr. Walter. He was a quiet man, didn't bother anyone. His farm was small, but it had good water and fertile land. After his wife disappeared, he became very lonely. His wife disappeared? A long time ago, before I was born. They say she left suddenly and never came back. The old man never spoke about it. Rachel felt a shiver. That information seemed important, but she didn't know why. When they arrived at the farm, the sun was already setting. The pickup truck stopped in front of a worn wooden gate. Rachel got out first and looked around. There was a simple house, small, but apparently intact, with brick walls painted white that were already fading. Next to it, an old well. And further on, a large dark wooden barn with some loose boards and the roof partly collapsed. The children ran out of the pickup truck, excited about the open space. "Be careful," shouted Rachel. "We don't know if everything is safe." Robert helped carry the suitcases to the house's porch. "If you need anything, the town isn't far. My aunt has the house phone here. Thank you for everything." When he left, Rachel stood there on the porch, watching her children run across the land, golden in the twilight. For the first time in years, she felt something like hope. Maybe this was truly a fresh start. Inside, the house was dusty but organized. It had 3 small bedrooms, a simple living room, a kitchen with a wood-burning stove, and a bathroom with a working shower. The furniture was old, but it was all there. Clean sheets stored in the closet, dishes in the kitchen, even some pots. "Mom, come see," called Emily from the window. "There's a dog outside." Rachel went to the window and saw a caramel-colored mixed-breed dog lying near the barn, watching them from a distance. "It must be from the area. Don't get close, we don't know if it's mean." That first night, Rachel made a simple dinner with the few things they had brought. They ate sitting at the wooden kitchen table, tired but satisfied. The twins fell asleep almost immediately in the bed they would share. Emily and Ethan stayed up longer, talking quietly about the new things. Rachel went out to the porch after everyone was asleep. The sky was full of stars, more than she had ever seen in the city. The silence was different, filled with the sounds of crickets and wind. She thought about how she had gotten there, from an apartment about to be evicted to owning a rural property. It seemed unreal. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The next morning, Rachel woke up with the sun's rays coming through the bedroom window. It took her a few seconds to remember where she was. The children were still asleep, so she took the opportunity to explore the property better in the daylight. The land was larger than it seemed the night before. Besides the house and the barn, there was a small fenced pasture, some fruit trees, and what looked like an abandoned vegetable garden. Everything needed care, but it had potential. Rachel walked to the barn. The door was a bit stuck, but she managed to open it. The smell of old wood and earth greeted her. Inside, there were old tools hanging on the walls, some empty feed bags, a cart without wheels, everything covered in a thick layer of dust. That's when she saw in the darkest corner of the barn an old leather suitcase. It was partly hidden behind some loose boards. Rachel approached, curious. The suitcase was locked, but the lock was rusty. With a little effort, she managed to open it. Inside was money. A lot of money. Old bills, some still in cruzeros, tied in bundles with dried-out rubber bands. Rachel felt her legs weaken. She picked up one of the bundles with trembling hands. There must have been thousands there. Under the money there were yellowed envelopes. Rachel took one and opened it carefully. It was a handwritten letter with neat penmanship. "Walter, I'm leaving this here for when you understand I can't stay any longer. The money is mine, from my family, and I want you to do something good with it when I'm no longer here. Don't look for me. Helen." Rachel read the letter 3 times. Was this from Mr. Walter's wife? The one who had disappeared? Why did she leave money hidden? There were more envelopes. Some letters were addressed to people with names Rachel didn't recognize. Others were just notes, fragments of thoughts. One of them said, "I can't live in fear anymore. He doesn't understand that his words hurt as much as anything else. I need to protect what's mine before it's too late." Rachel felt a tightness in her heart. That woman was suffering. She had fled a bad marriage and left that money hidden. But why had Mr. Walter never used it? Did he not even know it was there? "Mom, where are you?" It was Emily's voice. Rachel quickly closed the suitcase and pushed it back into the corner. She needed to think more about it before telling the children. "I'm here in the barn, coming." Rachel went out and found her 4 children awake on the porch, still in their pajamas. "Good morning, my loves. Who wants to help explore everything today?" The following days were intense. Rachel and the children cleaned the whole house, organized the bedrooms, washed clothes in the old backyard sink. Ethan discovered there was an abandoned chicken coop in the back and begged to have chickens. Joshua and Michael made friends with the rusty-colored dog, which gradually approached and ended up staying around. Emily, always more observant, noticed that her mother was worried about something. "Mom, is everything okay?" "Yes, honey. I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to make things work here. Are we going to grow food? We can try. The soil seems good." Rachel still hadn't told them about the money. She didn't know what to do with it. It was a lot of money. It could change their lives, but it came from a sad story. And technically, it belonged to Mr. Walter's late wife. Did she have the right to use it? On Friday, a week after they arrived, Rachel went to town to buy groceries. She left Emily in charge of her brothers and got a ride with a neighbor who was passing by the property. At the local market, while picking out some basic supplies, she heard 2 ladies talking in the next aisle. "Heard there are new people at Walter's farm." "That's right, a woman with a bunch of kids. They say he left everything to her." "How strange. Didn't he have any family?" "He had a nephew in New York City. Never showed up, but now that the old man's dead, they say he's looking for a way to challenge the will." Rachel felt a chill. A nephew? Mrs. Barbara hadn't mentioned that. She finished the shopping quickly and returned to the farm with a heavy heart. That night, after the children had fallen asleep, Rachel went back to the barn with a flashlight. She searched more carefully and found another hidden compartment beneath a loose floorboard. Inside were more envelopes, old photographs, and what appeared to be a very old property deed. One of the photos showed a beautiful woman around 40 years old, smiling timidly at the camera. On the back was written Helen, 1992. Rachel looked at that face and felt a strange connection. That woman had hidden all of that there for some important reason. There was also a notebook with notes. Rachel began to read by the flashlight's beam. It was a sort of diary, but the entries were sparse, written at different times. March 1993. I don't know what to do anymore. Walter changed after we lost the baby. He blames me, says I'm good for nothing. I'm keeping my mother's money here because I'm afraid he'll take it and spend it on drink. July 1993. I thought about leaving today. I packed a bag, but I didn't have the courage. Where would I go? My family doesn't accept me anymore. October 1993. Walter apologized today. He said he's going to change. I want to believe it, but I've heard that so many times. Rachel kept reading, feeling that woman's pain in every word. The diary ended abruptly in December 1993 with a final entry. I'm leaving. I'm leaving the money here because I know that one day someone who needs it will find it. May this person use it to do the good that I couldn't do. Rachel closed the notebook with tears in her eyes. So that was it? Helen had run away and left everything behind, including the money that was legally hers. And somehow, she wanted another person in need to benefit from it. But how had Mr. Walter never found it? Did he know, and had he respected his wife's wish, did he change after she left? Rachel returned home with more questions than answers. She lay in bed, but sleep wouldn't come. She thought about the woman who had written those words 30 years ago. She thought about Mr. Walter who, apparently alone, and perhaps regretful, decided at the end of his life to leave everything to a stranger he had seen caring for his children with love. Maybe he wanted to make up for what he did to his wife. Maybe he wanted someone to have the happiness on the farm that Helen never had. On Monday morning, Rachel was in the yard hanging clothes when she saw a black pickup truck approaching on the dirt road. She wasn't expecting visitors. The children were playing near the well, and she called Emily. "Take your brothers inside, please." "Who is it, Mom?" "I don't know, just go." The pickup stopped in front of the gate. A man got out, tall, around 50 years old, dressed in dress pants and a light shirt. He had an elegant bearing that contrasted with the rural setting. "Good morning," he said, opening the gate without asking for permission. "You must be Rachel Thompson." "Yes, can I help you?" "I'm Richard Gardner, nephew of Walter Gardner." Rachel felt her stomach turn. So the ladies at the market were right. "Nephew?" "That's right. I came to talk about this property. The property is mine. It's all registered." Richard smiled in a way that didn't reach his eyes. "Look, I understand that my uncle was a very old man when he made this will. Sometimes people at that age make questionable choices. The will was officially registered. I spoke with the notary. Mrs. Barbara is a very kind lady, but sometimes she lets certain irregularities slide. My lawyer is already reviewing everything." "What do you want?" "I want what rightfully belongs to the family. My uncle was confused in his last months. You took advantage of that." Rachel felt anger rising. "I didn't even know your uncle. I didn't even know this property existed until I got the letter from the notary office." "That's what you say. How convenient, isn't it? A desperate woman about to be evicted suddenly inherits a farm from an old loaner." "How do you know I was going to be evicted?" Richard smiled again. "I did my research. I know everything about you, Rachel. I know you've worked at 3 different restaurants in recent years. I know your ex-husband abandoned you. I know you can barely support all these children. Then get off my property. Our property for now, but don't worry, I'll be generous. I'll give you a month to gather your things and leave. If you cooperate, I might even give you some money to help." "I'm not leaving. This farm is rightfully mine." Richard took a step closer, and Rachel saw something dangerous in his eyes. "You don't understand who you're dealing with. I have resources, I have lawyers, I have time. I can make your life hell if I want. Either you accept my generous offer and leave peacefully, or I'll remove you from here in the hardest way possible. You can leave. I'm not discussing this with you." Richard looked around the property with contempt. "This place is falling apart anyway. Do you really think you can keep it running? With what money? You barely have enough to buy food." "I said, get out." Richard walked back to the pickup truck, but before getting in, he turned around once more. "I'll be back, and when I return I hope you've made the right decision, because if you haven't, things are going to get very unpleasant." Rachel stood still in the middle of the yard, trembling with anger and fear, as the pickup truck drove away, leaving a cloud of dust. The children came running out of the house. "Mom, who was that man?" asked Emily. "No one important. Let's go back inside." But Rachel knew this was far from over. Richard Gardner didn't seem like the kind of man who gave up easily. And now she had a new problem. Besides having no money to keep the farm running, she'd have to deal with someone trying to take everything from her. That night, after the children fell asleep, Rachel went back to the barn. She looked at the suitcase hidden in the corner. The money inside could solve all her problems immediately. She could hire a lawyer to defend herself against Richard. She could buy what they needed for the farm, but something kept her from simply taking it. It didn't feel right. That money had a history. It had been left with a purpose. Helen had written that she wanted it to be used to do good. Rachel picked up the diary again and read a few more pages she had skipped. One entry caught her attention. February 1991. "I met a woman in town today. She had a black eye she tried to hide with makeup. I asked if she was okay, and she started crying. I felt so helpless. I wanted to help, but didn't know how. If I ever get the chance to make a difference in the life of someone like that, I will." Rachel closed the notebook feeling she understood. Helen wanted the money to help women in vulnerable situations, and she, Rachel, was exactly that at this moment. Maybe that's why Mr. Walter had left the farm to her. Maybe he knew about the hidden money and wanted her to find it. But she needed proof that the will was legitimate before using anything. Richard had planted a seed of doubt. What if he was right? What if the will was contested and she had to return everything? On Tuesday, Rachel went to the notary office again. Miss Barbara greeted her with her usual gentle manner. "Rachel, what a nice surprise. How are things at the farm?" "They're going. But I came here because I had a visitor, a man claiming to be Mr. Walter's nephew." Miss Barbara's face changed immediately. Richard Gardner showed up? You know him? Unfortunately, yes, he was here a few months ago, right after Mr. Walter passed away. He wanted to see the will. And what did you tell him? That the will was registered and clear about the deceased's wishes. Richard didn't like it at all. He said the will could be contested. Mrs. Barbara sighed and removed her glasses, cleaning them with a handkerchief. Sit here, dear, I need to tell you a few things. Rachel sat in the wooden chair in front of the old desk at the Mitchell Notary office. Mr. Walter came here 6 months before passing away. Said he wanted to make a will leaving everything to you. I asked if he was sure if there wasn't any family. He told me he had a nephew, his late sister's son, but that this nephew had never cared about him. And you agreed to register it anyway. He was lucid, had all the medical documents proving his mental sanity. He brought a lawyer from out of town to witness. Everything was done correctly. He told me he used to go to a restaurant in the capital and always saw you taking care of your children with such affection, even clearly going through hardships. He said you never accepted a tip from him, that you were always polite and kind. Rachel felt her eyes welling up. She vaguely remembered an elderly gentleman who went to the restaurant where she worked on Saturdays. He always ordered the same dish, always left the table tidy. But there were so many customers. Did he say anything else? He said he had made serious mistakes in life, that he had lost the person he loved because of his own bitterness. He said he wanted to do something good before leaving, wanted to give someone deserving the chance he had wasted. His wife ran away, didn't she? Mrs. Barbara looked surprised. You know about Helen? I found some of her things at the property. Helen was a wonderful woman, very patient, very kind. Their marriage was difficult. Walter drank, had a terrible temper. She endured it for years but eventually left. We never saw her around here again, and he never looked for her, not that I know of. After she left, he stopped drinking, became quieter, more withdrawn. I think he regretted it, but it was too late. He lived alone on that farm for over 30 years. Rachel thought about the hidden money, the letters, the diary. Helen had left all that there, perhaps hoping that one day it would be used for good. And Walter, regretful, had left the entire property to a stranger he had seen being the kind of mother Helen would have been if she'd had the chance. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out now continuing. What about Richard? Asked Rachel. Can he contest the will? He can try, but it would be hard to prove anything. The will is impeccable. Walter was lucid, had medical proof, witnesses. Richard would have to prove coercion or manipulation, and there's no evidence of that. He said he has lawyers. Richard is a businessman. He buys rural properties, resells them to big companies. His uncle's farm is worth a lot because it has clean water and fertile land. He doesn't want the farm for sentimental value. He wants it for the money. So he'll keep pressuring me. Probably yes, but you have the law on your side. Don't let him intimidate you. Rachel returned home with a mix of relief and worry. The will was legitimate, she had the right to the property, but Richard wasn't going to give up easily. The following days were relatively calm. The children were adapting more and more to life on the farm. Emily had started planting some seeds in the abandoned garden. Ethan took care of the 3 chickens a neighbor had donated. Joshua and Michael explored every corner of the property with the dog, which they had named Rusty. Rachel used the little money she had to buy the basics: rice, beans, some vegetables. She was running out of funds quickly and needed to find a way to generate income. She thought about selling eggs when the chickens started laying. She thought about making sweets to sell in the city. But those would be temporary solutions. The money in the barn continued to weigh on her conscience. Every night she thought about it. Could she use it? Should she use it? Helen had left it for someone in need to find, but Rachel still felt she needed more clarity about it all. The following Friday, 2 weeks after Richard's visit, Rachel was in the city buying groceries when she saw a car parked in front of the notary office. It was an expensive black sedan. A man in a suit got out and entered the establishment. Rachel had a bad feeling. She finished her shopping quickly and went to the notary office. Through the window, she saw the man talking seriously with Mrs. Barbara, showing papers. She entered, and the man turned around. "You must be Rachel Thompson," he said, his voice formal and cold. "Yes. I am Dr. Martin Sullivan, attorney for Mr. Richard Gardner. I am here to officially notify you of the challenge to the will." "Challenge?" Mrs. Barbara looked worried. "He has filed a petition questioning the validity of the will based on allegations of coercion." "What coercion? I didn't even know Mr. Walter." The lawyer opened a briefcase and took out some documents. "We have witnesses who will testify that you frequented Mr. Walter's house in the months prior to his passing." "That's a lie. We have photos of you in Fairfield before the inheritance was finalized." "I was never here before receiving the letter." "Then how do you explain these photos?" The lawyer showed some printed photos. Rachel looked and felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. The photos showed a woman from behind, wearing a light dress similar to her, talking to an elderly man in front of a house that could be the farm. "That's not me," said Rachel, but her voice came out shaky. "The photos are dated 3 months before the will was registered. The woman in the photos looks a lot like you." "But it's not me. I was never here before." Mrs. Barbara asked to see the photos. She studied them carefully. "These photos are of poor quality. You can't see the face clearly." "They are sufficient to raise reasonable doubts," said the lawyer. "Along with the witness statements, we have grounds to contest." "What witnesses?" "People from the community who saw you visiting the deceased." Rachel was desperate. This was a setup, but how could she prove it? "You're making all this up." "You will receive the official notification in the coming days. You will have a deadline to respond. I suggest you hire a lawyer." When the lawyer left, Rachel collapsed into the chair, trembling. "He's lying, Mrs. Barbara. I swear I was never here before." "I know, dear. But Richard has the resources to build a convincing defense. He will do anything to get you out of there." "What do? I don't have money for a lawyer." "There are lawyers who work pro bono for cases of justice. I'll give you some contacts." Rachel returned to the farm, devastated. How was this happening? She finally had a place to restart her life with her children, and someone wanted to take it all away from her with lies. That night, after the children were asleep, Rachel went back to the barn. She looked at the suitcase with the money. She needed that money to hire a lawyer and defend herself, but using the money would mean assuming she had a right to it. And if Richard found out, he could use it against her, saying she was stealing things from the property. Rachel opened the suitcase and counted. There was much more than she had initially imagined. It must have been about $300,000 in current values. It was a fortune. But it was also a ticking time bomb. She picked up Helen's diary again and flipped through it, looking for some guidance. In the middle of the notebook, she found a page she had skipped. "If someone ever finds this, please use it wisely. This money came from the sale of my family's farm. It's rightfully mine, but I can't take it with me. I know Walter will never look here. He's been afraid of the barn ever since his calf got lost in there as a child. I'm leaving this for whoever finds it, because I believe things come to the right people at the right time. If you found it, it's because you need it. Use it to do the good I never had the chance to do." Rachel felt the tears streaming down. Helen was saying she could use it. She was leaving it exactly for a situation like this. But still, Rachel hesitated. She needed a lawyer before making any decision. On Monday, Rachel called one of the contacts Mrs. Barbara had given her. It was a lawyer named Francis Oliver, who worked on inheritance defense cases for low-income people. Francis came to the farm that same afternoon. She was a woman around 40 with short hair and a determined expression. She listened carefully to Rachel's whole story, taking notes. "These photos they showed are clearly doctored or misleading," said Francis. "But the problem is they'll use them to plant doubt. Judges are human, and doubt is dangerous in inheritance cases." "But I didn't do anything wrong." "I know, but we'll need to prove it convincingly. Do you have any record of where you were 3 months ago? Receipts, photos, anything?" Rachel thought. 3 months ago, she was still in her old apartment, working at the restaurant. "I have my work time cards. I worked 6 days a week, from 11 in the morning to 9 at night." "Perfect, that can help. I'll request those records. I'll also look into the supposed witnesses Richard is using. I bet they're people he paid to lie." "And how much will all this cost?" Francis smiled slightly. "I'll be honest, Rachel. Normally, I'd charge about 10,000 Rs for a case like this, but Mrs. Barbara told me about your situation. I can work pro bono initially, and if you win the case, you can pay me what you can later. Why would you do that? Because I believe in justice, and because I've seen many cases like yours, where wealthy people try to take advantage of vulnerable individuals. It makes me furious. Rachel felt immense relief. She had someone on her side now. There's something else I need to tell you, said Rachel. I found something on the property. She took Frances to the barn and showed her the suitcase with the money, the diary, the letters. Frances was silent for a long moment, looking at everything. This changes things, she said finally. This money belonged to Helen. Technically, after she disappeared, it became part of Mr. Walter's estate. When he died, it passed to you along with the property. So I can use it? Legally, yes. But I suggest you don't use it yet. If Richard finds out, he'll claim you were after the money all along. Let's first win the case about the property, then you can use the money however you want. Rachel agreed. It made sense, but she was running out of resources. How was she going to manage financially until the case was resolved? As if reading her thoughts, Frances said, "In the meantime, I'll see if I can arrange some temporary help. I know some organizations that assist single mothers in vulnerable situations." In the following days, Rachel received the official notice of the will contestation. She had 90 days to respond. Frances began working on the defense, gathering evidence, looking for inconsistencies in Richard's claims. But as the legal process unfolded, life on the farm became increasingly difficult. Rachel had to choose between buying food or fixing the leaking roof, between buying chicken feed or medicine when Joshua got sick. Emily, always observant, noticed her mother's stress. "Mom, we could go back to the city," she said one night. "Back to where, honey?" "We don't have an apartment anymore." "We'll figure something out. I don't want to see you so worried." Rachel hugged her daughter tightly. "We're not leaving here. This is our home now. We're going to fight for it." But inside, Rachel was starting to doubt if she could. Richard had endless resources. She only had the truth and a lawyer who worked for free. That's when Rachel met Mrs. Judith. The closest neighbor to the farm, about 2 miles away, was a 72-year-old woman who lived alone in a small house. She showed up one Wednesday afternoon, bringing a basket of greens from her own garden. "I came to meet the new neighbor," she said with a warm smile. "I'm Judith Anderson." "Rachel Thompson, please come in, Mrs." Judith had that grandmotherly way about her that makes any child feel at ease. Within minutes, Ethan was showing her the chickens, the twins were telling her about Rusty, and Emily was helping serve coffee. "I heard you inherited the farm from Walter," said Mrs. Judith, sitting at the kitchen table. "Yes, did you know him?" "I knew him and Helen. We were neighbors for over 40 years. I saw everything that happened." Rachel sat down, paying close attention. "Walter was a difficult man," continued Mrs. Judith, "very proud, very bitter. Helen was an angel. She endured years of a bad marriage, always hoping he would change. When she finally left, he got even worse. He drank alone, yelled at anyone who came near. But did he change later? Years later, yes. He stopped drinking overnight. He became quieter, more thoughtful. I think regret ate him up inside. Many times I saw him fixing things on the farm that he himself had destroyed when he was drinking. It was as if he was trying to rebuild what he had ruined. And the nephew, Richard Gardner?" Mrs. Judith made a face. "That one was never any good. He only showed up here twice in his life. Once, when he was a teenager, he came to ask his uncle for money. Walter sent him away. Another time was a few months before Walter passed away. He showed up suddenly, wanting to talk about selling the farm. Walter sent him away again. Richard is contesting the will. That doesn't surprise me. That boy only thinks about money, but he won't get anything. Walter was perfectly sound of mind when he made the will." "How do you know?" "Because he told me. He came here about 6 months before he died. Said he had met a young woman in the city who reminded him of Helen. He said you had 4 children and cared for them with such great love that he couldn't help but notice. He said he was going to leave the farm to you, because you deserve to have a safe place to raise those children." Rachel felt tears rolling down. "He really said that?" "He did. And more, he said it was his way of making amends. He couldn't do anything for Helen anymore, but he could help another woman who was going through hard times. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Rachel told Mrs. Judith about Richard's threats, about the fake photos, about the whole situation. The neighbor listened to everything with a serious expression. That's typical of him. But don't worry, I'll testify on your behalf. I'll tell everything I know about Walter and about Richard, and more. I'll spread the word around town that you're being treated unfairly. The people here are simple, but they have a strong sense of justice. And that's exactly what Mrs. Judith did. In the following days, Rachel started receiving visits from other neighbors. Some brought food, others offered help to fix things around the farm. The community was mobilizing around her. An elderly man named Norman, who owned a property across town, came with his son and fixed the leaking roof. A woman named Carolyn brought clothes that her grandchildren had outgrown for Rachel's children. Other neighbors donated seeds for the garden, old but still productive chickens, and even a goat that needed a new home. Rachel was moved by the solidarity. For the first time in years, she felt she was part of a community, that she wasn't alone. But Richard didn't give up. A week later, Rachel found the dog Rusty with an injured paw. There were no clear signs of mistreatment, but Rachel suspected someone had done something. The twins were devastated. Later, tire tracks started appearing on the road near the farm at night. Rachel would wake up to the sound of engines, but when she looked out the window, the vehicle was already driving away. It was clear they were trying to intimidate her. Emily started having nightmares. Ethan became frightened by any noise. Rachel tried to stay calm for the children, but inside she was exhausted. The stress was taking its toll. Frances came to the farm again to update her on the case. I managed to prove the photos were manipulated, she said. I hired an expert who analyzed them and confirmed the dates were digitally altered. The photos are from years ago, not from 3 months ago. That's great. Yes, but Richard is being persistent. Now he's claiming you exerted emotional influence over Mr. Walter Gardner, taking advantage of his vulnerability. How can I prove I didn't do that if I never spoke to him beyond serving him at the restaurant? I'm gathering statements from your co-workers. They all say you were professional, polite, but never had a personal relationship with customers. I'm also tracking Mr. Walter Gardner's visits to the restaurant. He went there on Saturdays, always alone, always ate quickly and left. There's no evidence of any special interaction between you. But Richard will keep making things up. Probably, yes. Men like him don't give up easily. But with every false claim they make, they dig themselves deeper. A judge isn't foolish. They'll see he's trying to force a narrative that doesn't exist. Rachel wanted to believe it, but the fear was constant. What if the judge decided in Richard's favor? Where would she go with 4 children? That night Rachel made a decision. She went to the barn, took one of the bundles of money from the suitcase and put it in an envelope. The next day, she went to Frances's office. I want to pay you, she said, handing over the envelope. I know you said you would work pro bono, but you deserve to be compensated. Frances opened the envelope and saw the money. She looked at Rachel in surprise. Where did you get this? Rachel told her about finding a small amount that Mr. Walter Gardner had hidden at the farm. She didn't lie completely. She just omitted the actual quantity. Are you sure? You might need this money. I'm sure. You're fighting for me and my children. You deserve to be paid. Frances accepted, but Rachel saw something in the lawyer's eyes, a mix of admiration and concern. The case continued for a few more weeks. Frances presented all the evidence to the judge. Mrs. Judith Anderson and other neighbors gave statements. Rachel's time records proved she was in the capital working on the dates she was supposedly visiting Mr. Walter Gardner. But Richard had an ace up his sleeve. At the main hearing, he brought a surprise witness. It was a woman around 50 years old, well-dressed, whom Rachel had never seen before. This is Catherine Miller, Richard's lawyer said. She worked as a housekeeper for Mr. Walter Gardner in the last few months of his life. She will testify about the deceased's mental state. Rachel felt her heart race. Oh. She looked at Frances, who seemed equally surprised. Catherine went to the witness stand and swore to tell the truth, Her testimony was devastating. "I worked for Mr. Walter 3 times a week," she said. "He was very confused in the last few months. He forgot things, repeated the same stories. Sometimes he didn't even remember my name. He clearly wasn't in a condition to make important decisions." "And did you witness any interactions between him and Mrs. Rachel Thompson?" asked Richard's lawyer. "Yes, she visited his house on Saturdays. They would always talk for hours. She was very attentive, almost too intimate, you know. I became suspicious." Rachel was in shock. That was all a lie. She had never been to Mr. Walter's house. Francis asked to cross-examine the witness. "Mrs. Catherine, you said you worked for Mr. Walter 3 times a week. On which days?" "Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And on Saturdays, when you supposedly saw Mrs. Rachel visiting. Were you at the house?" Catherine hesitated for a split second. "Sometimes I went on Saturdays too, for extra cleaning." "But you said you worked 3 times a week. Now it's 4 times. "It depended on the need." "And do you have any way to prove you were there on Saturdays? Payment receipts, records?" "Mr. Walter paid me in cash. There were no receipts." Francis took some documents from her folder. "Interesting, because here I have Mr. Walter's bank statements. He made monthly payments by transfer to a cleaning company. There is no record of cash payments to a private employee." Catherine paled. "It must be a mistake. He paid me in cash, I know that." "And curiously," Francis continued, "you live in New York City, the same neighborhood where Mr. Richard Gardner has his office. What a coincidence, isn't it?" The judge intervened. "Miss Francis, where are you going with this?" "I want to demonstrate that this witness is being paid to lie. She never worked for Mr. Walter. She is part of a conspiracy by Mr. Richard to invalidate the will." Richard's lawyer protested, but the damage was done. Catherine had been exposed. After the hearing, Francis was radiant. "We did it! They exposed their own lies. The judge clearly saw what was happening." Rachel wanted to feel relief, but she was too exhausted. Weeks of stress, sleepless nights, constant worry about the children. She just wanted it to be over. The judge's decision came 2 weeks later. Rachel was at the farm when Francis called. "We won," said the lawyer, her voice overflowing with joy. "The judge rejected all of Richard's claims. The will was upheld. The farm is yours, Rachel." Rachel sat on the kitchen floor and cried. Tears of relief, of exhaustion, of gratitude. The children ran to hug her, not fully understanding but sensing it was something good. But the victory in court didn't mean the end of the problems. Richard didn't show up again, but Rachel knew he was out there, possibly planning another move. And more importantly, she still had to figure out what to do with the farm and the hidden money. A few nights later, Rachel was in the barn again, looking at the suitcase. She had won the legal battle. The farm was officially hers. Could she use Helen's money now? She picked up the diary once more and read a passage she had marked. "I want this money to help women who are alone, who are struggling, who need a chance. I didn't have that chance when I needed it. Maybe someone will." Rachel understood what she needed to do. She wasn't going to use all the money just for herself. She would honor Helen's wish. The next day, Rachel went into town and looked for Mrs. Barbara. "I need your help," she said. "I want to create something here." "What do you have in mind?" "I want to turn part of the farm into a place that helps other women. A place where single mothers can come, learn to plant, make things, generate income. I want to use what Mr. Walter left me to do what Helen would have wanted done." Mrs. Barbara smiled with tears in her eyes. "That would be wonderful. And you know what? I know several women in this area who need exactly that. Women who were abandoned, who are struggling to support their children, who need an opportunity." Rachel began working on the project. She used part of Helen's money to hire someone to teach sustainable farming techniques. She renovated part of the farm to serve as a community workspace. She started small, with just 3 women Mrs. Barbara had recommended. The women came 3 times a week. They learned to plant, care for animals, make preserves and sweets to sell. Rachel shared with them everything she was learning, and more importantly, they supported each other, sharing their stories, their fears, their hopes. Emily loved to help. Gradually, the 12-year-old girl became a leader among the children who came with their mothers. Ethan taught about the chickens. Joshua and Michael made everyone laugh with their antics. Mrs. Judith came every week to bring vegetables and chat. She told stories of when the area was different, when Helen still lived there. The women listened enchanted to those stories of a time they hadn't known. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Helen's money was running out faster than Rachel expected. Farm renovations, materials, tools, everything was expensive. She needed to find a sustainable way to keep the project running. That's when one of the women in the group, named Rebecca, had an idea. What if we sold the things we make here? The sweets, the preserves, the crafts. Who's going to buy them? There's a market in town every week. We could have a stall. Rachel liked the idea. They started small, with a simple table and a few products. But the quality of what they made was so good that within a few weeks they had regular customers. The townspeople liked knowing they were supporting a project that helped women in the community. The income wasn't much, but it helped. Rachel could buy more materials, pay small expenses, even give a little profit to each woman who participated. The project was growing organically, but Rachel knew she couldn't rely on that alone. She needed something more stable. That's when Frances brought an interesting proposal. "I heard about a state government notice," she said. "It's a program to support solidarity economy projects in rural areas. You fit perfectly. If you get the funding, you could expand what you're doing a lot." Rachel had never dealt with that kind of thing before, but with help from Frances and Mrs. Barbara, she prepared the proposal. She described the project, explained the impact it was having, presented the numbers. She sent it all and waited, trying not to get her hopes up. Meanwhile, life on the farm continued. Rachel's children were becoming more and more settled. Emily had become friends with other girls in the area who studied at the same school. Ethan was learning to read better and always had a book about animals in his hands. Joshua and Michael were inseparable and known to everyone as the mischievous but lovable twins. For the first time in years, Rachel felt at peace. She didn't have much money, didn't have a luxurious life, but she had a roof over her head, food on the table, and more importantly, she had a community, people who cared, who helped, who were together. One afternoon, Rachel was in the garden with the other women when she saw a pickup truck approaching on the road. Her heart froze. It was Richard's truck. He stopped and got out, but this time he didn't have the arrogance from before. He looked tired, even a bit older. "Can I talk to you?" he asked, without entering the property. Rachel went to the gate, the other women watching from a distance. "What do you want?" "I came to apologize." Rachel wasn't expecting that. "Apologize?" "I was wrong. I tried to take from you something that was rightfully yours. I did it out of greed because I thought I deserved that land more than you. And now? Now I understand that my uncle knew what he was doing. He saw me for who I really am, greedy, selfish, and he saw in you something I never had, genuine kindness." Rachel didn't know what to say. It seemed sincere, but she was tired of trusting. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Richard continued. "I just wanted you to know that I won't bother you anymore. The farm is yours, it always was." He returned to the pickup truck and drove away. Rachel stood there processing that conversation. Mrs. Anderson came over to her. "Do you believe him?" "I don't know. But it doesn't matter. I won't let his fear or anyone else's take me away from here." 3 months later, Rachel received the news. The project had been approved in the call for proposals. They were going to receive funding to expand, to hire more people, to help more women. The celebration at the farm was emotional. All the women from the project were there, along with their families. Mrs. Anderson made a huge cake. The children ran around the grounds. It was a simple party, but full of meaning. Rachel looked around and thought about how she had gotten there, from an apartment about to be evicted to a farm where she was building not just a home for her children, but a space of hope for other women. She thought of Mr. Gardner, whom she barely knew but who had completely changed her life. She thought of Helen, whom she never met, but whose legacy she was helping to fulfill. She thought of all the people who had supported her when she needed it most. Emily came to hug her. "I'm proud of you, Mum. I'm the one who's proud of you, honey, of all of you. You've been so strong through all of this. We've always been together." And it was true. In the toughest moments when Rachel thought about giving up, it was her children who kept her going. Their smiles, the hope in their eyes, the trust they had in her. But the story still had more twists. One morning, a few months later, Rachel received a visit from a woman she didn't know. She was a lady in her 60s, well-dressed, with greying hair and kind eyes. "My name is Sarah Martin," she said. "I was Helen's best friend." Rachel felt her heart race. She invited Sarah in and served coffee. The two sat at the kitchen table, and Sarah began to tell a story that Rachel had never imagined. "Helen didn't disappear," Sarah said. "She ran away, and I helped." "Ran away where?" "To Pennsylvania. She changed her name, started over. She wanted to cut all ties with the past." "Is she still alive?" Sarah nodded, her eyes teary. "She is, but she has advanced Alzheimer's. She lives in a nursing home. She doesn't recognize anyone anymore." Rachel felt a deep sadness for a woman she had never met. "Why did you come here?" "Because Helen, before she completely lost her memory, asked me to do something. She knew she had left money hidden at the farm. She wanted me to come here one day, find whoever was living here, and give a letter." Sarah took a yellowed envelope from her bag. Rachel opened it carefully. The letter was written in the same handwriting she already knew from the diary. "To whoever found my hiding place. If you're reading this, it means Sarah has carried out my last wish. The money was mine from the sale of my family's farm. My biggest regret was not having the courage to use it to help other women when I still could. Please use it that way. Create a place where women can find support, can learn, can start over. A place I wish I had when I needed it. With love and hope, Helen." Rachel was crying when she finished reading. "She knew," said Rachel. "She knew someone would find it and use it properly. Helen always had faith in people, even after all she went through. She said that Walter, deep down, was a good man who got lost in bitterness. She said she hoped he would find redemption before passing away. And he did. He left all this to me so I could do exactly what Helen wanted." Sarah smiled through her tears. "Can I see what you're doing here?" Rachel took Sarah to see the farm, showed her the project, introduced the women who were there that day. Sarah listened to each story attentively, asked questions, showed genuine interest. At the end of the day, before leaving, Sarah hugged Rachel tightly. "You're doing exactly what she wanted. Helen would be so happy to know this. I wish I had met her. You did, in a way, through the words she left behind, through the legacy you're carrying out. She's here, Rachel, in every woman you help, in every child who laughs in this place, in every plant that grows on this land." Sarah left but promised to return, and she kept her word. In the following months, she became a regular visitor, always bringing stories about Helen, about who she was before everything went wrong. The women in the project loved hearing those stories. It was as if Helen were there with them, guiding them. The project continued to grow. With the approved funding, Rachel was able to renovate more areas of the farm. She created a space for classes, another for food production, even a small community dining hall. The number of participating women tripled. Some stories were particularly touching. Rebecca, who had suggested selling products at the fair, managed to save enough money to open her own small business. She still participated in the project, but now also helped other women structure their own ventures. Cynthia, a 50-year-old woman who had arrived completely lost after a difficult divorce, found on the farm not only a means of support, but a new family. She came to live in a small room at the back of the property and became like an aunt to all the children. Amanda, a 28-year-old woman with 2 young children, came to the project extremely shy, hardly speaking. Gradually she opened up. She discovered a talent for crafts, and her pieces started being the best sellers at the fair. Each story was a testament to the transformative power of that place. Rachel saw in each of those women a bit of herself, a bit of Helen, a bit of all the women who once needed a chance and didn't get one. But not everything was perfect. There were constant challenges, months of drought where the garden suffered, periods of heavy rain that flooded the grounds, conflicts among participants that needed mediation, financial difficulties when sales dropped. Rachel learned that managing a project of that size was much more complex than she imagined. She had to learn about accounting, about people management, about how to handle different personalities and needs. There were moments when she wanted to give up, moments when everything seemed too heavy. It was in those moments that the community showed its strength. When Rachel was overwhelmed, Mrs. Judith would appear and take on some tasks. When money was short for something urgent, the neighbors would chip in. When there were conflicts hard to resolve, Frances would come to help with her mediation skills. Emily, now 13, was becoming more and more of a leader among the young women in the region. She organized activities for the children while their mothers worked, always with creativity and patience. Rachel saw her daughter growing not just in height, but in maturity and compassion. Ethan, at 8 years old, had become a little chicken expert. He had read every book about birds he could find and now gave talks to other boys in the area about how to care for a chicken coop. He had a special way with animals and everyone recognized it. Joshua and Michael, now 6 years old, were still mischievous but extremely affectionate. They had a special gift for making people smile, even on the most difficult days. They always showed up with flowers they had picked, drawings they had made, little stories they had invented. The farm had become much more than just a home. It was a symbol of hope, of new beginnings, of possibility. People from the entire region knew about the project. Some criticized it, saying that Rachel was attracting too many people, that it would cause problems. But most supported it, seeing the good that was being done. The weekly market where they sold their products became a meeting point. The women in the project not only sold, but created connections, made friends, built support networks that extended beyond the farm. 1 year after receiving the farm, Rachel was on the porch on a Sunday afternoon, watching the children play in the yard. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. The barn that once held secrets was now a community workspace. The house that was once empty of life now overflowed with laughter and conversation. Sarah came to visit that weekend, and the two talked for hours. Sarah told more about Helen, about the dreams she had, about the kind person she was before the bitter marriage changed her. She always wanted to have children, said Sarah, but she lost a baby and then couldn't get pregnant again. I think that's what finally destroyed the marriage. Walter blamed her and she blamed herself too. How sad. But look, Sarah glanced around at all the children running, playing, laughing. In a way, she has all these children now, all these children benefiting from what she left behind. Rachel had never thought of it that way, but it made sense. Helen, who could never have children of her own, was helping dozens of children through the legacy she left. Are you going to visit her? Asked Rachel. Helen? Yes, I am, every week. She doesn't recognize me anymore, but I talk to her anyway. I tell her about you, about the farm, about what's happening here. I like to think that somewhere deep in her mind she knows and is happy. Rachel wanted to meet Helen, to thank her in person, but knew it would be useless. The Helen who had written those letters, who had dreamed of helping other women, was no longer there, but her legacy was alive and vibrant on that farm. The months kept passing, bringing new seasons, new challenges, new victories. The project was recognized by the local government and received an honorable mention in a rural development program. Journalists came to write stories. Rachel didn't feel comfortable being the center of attention, but understood that the visibility helped the project. One particularly moving article told the whole story, from the imminent eviction to the thriving farm. Many people were touched and contacted them wanting to help, wanting to donate, wanting to replicate the project in other regions. Rachel, with Frances's help, created a small non-profit organization to manage everything in a more structured way. They named it Seeds of Hope, in honor of both the literal seeds they planted and the seeds of change they were sowing in the women's lives. But with growth also came new challenges. Some women participating in the project began to have unrealistic expectations, thinking Rachel could solve all their problems. Rachel had to learn to set healthy boundaries, to say no when necessary, not to overload herself trying to save everyone. There were also issues with people who tried to take advantage of the project, a supplier who charged exorbitant prices for materials, a woman who lied about her situation to receive benefits she didn't need, a man who tried to use his wife, who was in the project, to get a loan from Rachel. Each of these situations was a painful but necessary lesson. Rachel learned to be more cautious, to verify information, to trust, but also confirm. She learned that kindness and naivety were not the same thing. Mrs. Anderson was a key mentor in these lessons. With her life experience, she knew how to tell genuine people from opportunists. She taught Rachel to read signs, to ask the right questions, to protect the project without losing the essence of helping those who truly need it. Being kind doesn't mean being foolish, Mrs. Anderson would say. You can have a big heart and still be firm. Rachel took these words to heart and began applying more structure to the project. She created clear rules, selection processes, and participation criteria. It wasn't about excluding anyone, but ensuring that limited resources went to those who really needed them and were committed. 2 years after receiving the farm, Rachel was unrecognizable from the desperate woman who had arrived there. She was stronger, more confident, more self-assured. She still had difficult days, still had moments of doubt, but now she knew she could overcome them. The children had also grown and changed. Emily was 14 and already talking about studying agronomy in college. She wanted to learn more about sustainable agriculture and return to help the project. Ethan, at 9, had his small business selling eggs to the neighbors and proudly saved every penny. Joshua and Michael, at 7, were already helping in the garden and caring for the animals with surprising responsibility for their age. The farm had become a model of solidarity economy and community support. Other towns began to seek Rachel out, asking for advice on how to create similar projects. She was honored, but always made it clear that she didn't have all the answers, that she was learning along the way, and that each community had its own particularities. It was during one of these consultations, in a neighboring town, that Rachel met Paul. He was a volunteer agronomist for a similar project, having studied permaculture and sustainable farming techniques. They talked for hours about challenges, solutions, and dreams for the future. Rachel wasn't looking for romance. After being abandoned by her ex-husband, she had built high walls around her heart. But Paul was different, respectful, genuinely interested in the project, and not in her, unhurried, without pressure. They began to talk frequently, exchanging ideas about their projects. Paul visited the farm a few times, always bringing new knowledge, always willing to teach without asking for anything in return. The children liked him immediately. Even Rusty, the dog who was usually wary of strangers, took a liking to him. But Rachel took it slow. She was afraid of getting hurt, afraid to trust and be disappointed again. Emily, always observant, noticed, "Mom, it's okay to like someone again. I don't know if I'm ready, honey. You've been through so much, you deserve to be happy, and Paul is nice. It's too early. You don't have to rush anything. Just don't close your heart out of fear." Her daughter's words echoed. Rachel realized she was letting her painful past dictate her future. She decided to allow herself to feel, to see where it could lead, without haste but without paralyzing fear. Paul was patient. He respected Rachel's pace, never pushed for anything, was present but not intrusive. They built a solid friendship first, based on shared values and mutual respect. But like every story of overcoming, there were still obstacles to face. One afternoon, 3 years after Rachel had received the farm, a woman appeared on the property. She was a woman of about 65, thin, with white hair and tired eyes. She had a lost expression, as if she didn't quite know where she was. "Can I help you?" asked Rachel. The woman looked around, as if searching for something familiar. I used to live here," she said, her voice weak and confused. Rachel felt a chill. "You lived here?" "Yes, a long time ago. With my husband, Walter." Rachel felt her legs weaken. That was Helen. But Sarah had said she had advanced Alzheimer's, that she was in a nursing home. How was she here? "Are you Helen?" The woman looked at Rachel with a vague expression. "I am. Do you know my husband? I need to speak with him." "Let's go inside, have some water. It's hot." Rachel took Helen into the house, her heart racing. She picked up the phone and called Sarah. "Sarah, Helen is here." "What, that's impossible. She's at the nursing home. I just left there." "Then who is this woman at my house saying she's Helen?" There was silence on the other end. "Describe her to me." Rachel described the woman. Sarah sighed. That's her sister, Teresa. She also has mental issues, was always very attached to Helen. After Helen moved away, Teresa became obsessed with finding her. She must have run away from somewhere. What should I do? Keep her there, I'll come get her, I have her family's contact. While waiting, Rachel talked with Teresa. The woman was clearly confused, mixing up the present and the past, sometimes thinking Rachel was someone else, sometimes thinking she was in another time. Helen left, Teresa said. She shouldn't have gone. He promised he would change. Why did she leave? He was bad to her, said horrible things. She would cry alone in the barn. I saw once she was hiding something there. Hiding what? I don't know. But she said it was to do good. Said he couldn't take it. That one day someone would find it and use it right. Rachel felt tears in her eyes. Even Helen's sister vaguely knew about the hidden money, about the intention behind it. Sarah arrived an hour later, along with Teresa's nephew. They apologized profusely, explained that Teresa had run away from the center where she lived and somehow managed to catch a bus to Fairfield. Before leaving, Teresa looked at Rachel with a moment of sudden clarity. You're taking good care of this place, she said. Helen would be happy. After they left, Rachel sat on the porch for a long time, processing everything. That unexpected encounter had been like receiving a blessing, even if from such a tragic source. Life continued its flow. The project grew, the children grew, the farm prospered. Rachel and Paul developed a relationship gradually, without rush, building something solid and true. 4 years after everything began, Rachel was preparing a special party. It was the anniversary of receiving the farm, and she wanted to celebrate with everyone who had been part of that journey. Mrs. Judith was there, of course, organizing everything with the energy of someone half her age. Frances came with her husband and children. Sarah made sure to be present. Dozens of women who had been through the project showed up, each bringing something to share. The children ran everywhere. Emily, now 17 and about to enter university, coordinated the activities with the maturity of someone who had grown up amid challenges and triumphs. Ethan, at 12, proudly showed off his expanded chicken coop. Joshua and Michael, at 10 years old, put on capoeira performances they had learned from one of the neighbors. During the party, Rachel gave an emotional speech. She talked about arriving there desperate, with nowhere to go. She spoke about the unexpected gift that Mr. Walter had left. She spoke about Helen and the legacy she had hidden in the barn. She spoke about all the people who had helped along the way. I learned that true wealth isn't in what we have, but in what we share, she said. This farm could have been just a home for me and my children, but it became a home for all of us, a place where women find support, where children can grow up in community, where hope is planted and blossoms along with the seeds in the earth. There was applause, tears, hugs. That moment represented much more than a birthday. It represented the transformation of pain into purpose, of abandonment into belonging, of despair into hope. But Rachel knew the journey was far from over. There were still women needing help, still challenges to face, still much work ahead. But now she wasn't alone. She had an entire community by her side. That night, after everyone had left and the children were asleep, Rachel went to the barn. There was no more money hidden there. It had been used to build everything, but she kept Helen's diary in a special box, along with some letters. She took the diary and read the last entry once more. I'm leaving. I'm leaving the money here because I know that one day someone who needs it will find it. May that person use it to do the good I couldn't do. Rachel closed the notebook and whispered to the wind. I did it, Helen. I'm doing the good you wanted, and I'll keep doing it. Paul appeared in the barn door. Is everything okay? It's great, I was just giving thanks. Thanks to whom? To the people who made all this possible. Some I met, others I'll never know. But all were essential. Paul hugged Rachel, and they stayed there for a moment, in silence, just appreciating the gift they had worked so hard to achieve. The following years brought even more transformations. The Seeds of Hope project expanded to 3 neighboring towns. Each new unit was managed by a woman who had started as a participant and grown into a leader. It was a self-replicating model, creating waves of positive change. Emily graduated in agronomy and returned to work on the project, bringing academic knowledge to complement the practical experience. Ethan started a small poultry business that employed other families in the region. Joshua and Michael, always together, decided to study education, wanting to work with the project's children when they grew up. Rachel and Paul married in a simple but moving ceremony on the farm itself, surrounded by the people they loved. Paul moved to the farm and brought even more knowledge and dedication to the project. Mrs. Judith continued to be a constant presence until, at 83, she became seriously ill. Rachel cared for her with the same dedication Judith had shown all those years. In the end, when Judith was hospitalized, Rachel held her hand and said, "Thank you for everything, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." Judith smiled weakly. "I didn't do anything special. I just saw what was obvious. You always had that strength, Rachel. You just needed an opportunity to show it." Judith passed away peacefully, surrounded by the people she loved. The funeral was huge. Half the town attended. Rachel made sure to speak, to tell how that lady had been fundamental to everything she had achieved. The loss of Judith left a void, but also a legacy of wisdom and generosity that would continue to inspire everyone. Sarah continued visiting Helen regularly. During one of these visits, the nurse mentioned that Helen had experienced a rare moment of clarity. She had asked for paper and pen and written something. Sarah took the paper and read, "Thank you. I know someone did the right thing. I can rest now." Sarah brought that paper to show Rachel. The two cried together, feeling that somehow, even amid the confusion of Alzheimer's, Helen knew her wish had been fulfilled. Helen passed away a few months later, at 83 years old. Sarah organized a memorial at the farm, at the site of the barn where everything had begun. Dozens of women attended, each sharing how the project had changed their lives. It was the perfect tribute to Helen, seeing the impact of what she had left behind. The years kept passing. The farm became a national reference in solidarity economy projects. Rachel was invited to give lectures at universities, to participate in panels on rural development, to advise other similar projects. But she never forgot her origins. She never forgot the days of desperation when she was about to be evicted. She never forgot the fear of not being able to feed her children. She never forgot how she felt when she received that unexpected letter from the notary office. Whenever a new woman arrived at the project, desperate, without hope, Rachel would sit with her and tell her story. Not to boast, but to show that change was possible, that a happy ending was possible, that no matter how dark the present seemed, the future could be bright. One of these women, named Bethany, came to the project particularly broken. She had 3 children, had left an abusive relationship, and had nowhere to go. Rachel saw in her a reflection of herself years ago. She dedicated herself especially to helping Bethany, not just with work and income, but with emotional support, friendship, and hope. Gradually, Bethany rebuilt herself. She found her calling in making sweets. Her gourmet brigadeiros became famous in the region. 2 years later, Bethany opened her own confectionery in town. On opening day, she asked Rachel to cut the ribbon. "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here," Bethany said, crying. "You saved me." "I didn't save you," Rachel replied. "You saved yourself. I just showed you it was possible." And that's what Rachel believed. The project didn't save anyone. It only showed possibilities, opened doors, offered tools. But each woman had to make her own way, find her own strength. 10 years after receiving the farm, Rachel was 45 years old. Her children were all adults and forging their own paths, but they remained involved with the project in some way. The farm had expanded to 10 acres, including areas that neighbors had donated or sold for a symbolic price. The Seeds of Hope project now had 11 units in different towns, helping over 300 women directly and impacting thousands indirectly through their families. It was much bigger than Rachel had ever dreamed. But the most important thing wasn't the numbers. It was the look of hope she saw in the eyes of every woman who arrived. It was the smile of children playing freely on the farm. It was the network of solidarity they had built together. It was living proof that kindness and dedication could truly change destinies. Richard Gardner never showed up again after that last visit where he apologized. Rachel heard from others that he had suffered some financial setbacks, had lost a lot in risky investments. Part of her felt sorry for him, but most of her felt it was poetic justice. He had tried to take from her something that didn't belong to him, and the universe had responded. The barn, which once held secrets and hidden money, was now a bright space for classes and workshops. The old planks had been replaced, but Rachel made sure to keep the original structure as a reminder of their humble beginnings. On the 15th anniversary of Rachel's arrival at the farm, an even bigger celebration was organized. Government officials came, representatives from universities, journalists, but most importantly, all the women and families who had been touched by the project over the years came. Rachel was on the porch watching everything when Sarah, now 82 but still vibrant, came to sit beside her. "Helen would be so proud," said Sarah. "I hope so. No doubt about it. You not only fulfilled her dream, you went beyond. You turned a simple idea into a movement that's changing so many people's lives. It wasn't just me. It was all of us together. But you were the catalyst. You had the courage to accept the unusual gift, to face the threats, to take risks, to believe. Many people in your situation would have given up." Rachel thought of the countless times she had almost given up, of the sleepless nights worrying about money, of the moments of doubt about doing the right thing, of the adversities that seemed insurmountable, but there was always something that kept her going. Sometimes it was the smile of one of the children, sometimes it was the progress of one of the women in the project, sometimes it was the memory of where they had started, and sometimes it was simply stubbornness, the refusal to let people like Richard win. End of story. And now, dear listener, tell us, what did you think of this story of overcoming? Would you make the same decisions that Rachel made? Have you ever experienced something similar? Leave your opinion in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories like this one. Your like makes all the difference for us to continue sharing stories that inspire.